Hey, it's Joe Trippi. The verdict is in. Trump guilty of 34 felonies. Of course, we recorded just before the verdict dropped on Thursday. But we got into a lot of this in the original recording that you'll hear. But I did want to bring it up now. Alex and I wanted to jump back on and start this podcast with our reaction and what I think this all means. Alex, where do you want to go?
Well, I did want to just shout out a tweet from our friend Philip at the Lincoln Project. I think Trump brought up the average number of felonies committed by American presidents from 0 to 0.74. So the 34 is now the first 34 that they have been convicted of. But no, I guess, Joe, yesterday was a hell of a day to be on social media. I think it hasn't been a day like that in a couple of years. But just from your take overall, what did you see in terms of the general reaction?
Well, look, they're going to do the same stuff. It was rigged. It's a disgrace. That's what Trump is saying. I'm a very innocent man. And basically every top Republican from McConnell, et cetera, has come out in support of Trump. Stefanik, Johnson, Graham, all saying this was unfair, weaponized against Trump. Larry Hogan is at least out there saying this is a dangerously divided moment in our history. All leaders, regardless of party, must not pour fuel on the fire with more toxic partisanship.
And what was the response?
So Chris LaCivita, Trump's campaign manager, responded to that with, quote, "You just ended your campaign," unquote, which his campaign was ended the second he got in because it's in Maryland, and he may have been a popular former governor, but that's I just think there was no way for him to walk this tightrope. The one thing, look, we talked a lot already, and you'll hear it more as we progress in the original episode that we recorded. That 31% of Republicans had said they would not vote for him if he was convicted of a crime. We had 53%, I think. You'll hear more about this in the episode. 53% of undecideds in the battleground states said they would not vote for him if convicted of a crime. Another poll had 7% of Trump supporters said they would not vote for him if he was convicted in this specific case. So when you look at those three numbers, now, do I really think 31% of Republicans won't vote for him over this? No, I don't think that. But is it 10% of them? Is it 5% of them? Is it 18%? It's somewhere. It ain't 31. It's going to, but, they said 31% said that. Same with 53% of undecideds in the battleground states. Okay, it's not going to be 53%.
Right. Well, it could be, but not because of that, right? I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'll be, no, but I'm saying, is it 10% of the undecideds? That's 5 points of undecideds that move to, that move away from Trump, that aren't going to Trump for sure. So, and if 7%, we're talking about Trump, MAGA, the base, the Trump base, 7% of them said they would not vote for him if this happened. So we'll see how that turns out in reality. Do I think it's going to hit those the higher area in those numbers? No, but it's going to hit some area, and even if it's a small amount, it's over for him. So I think that. But I wanted to get to something I did tweet, because I think this is what I really think this is important for all of us. To get and to, again, so think about it. 31% of Republicans out there have said they would not vote for him if he was convicted of a crime. And that's, so we're not, when I say what I'm about to read to you, I'm not talking about MAGA. Yes, you'll bump into a ton of MAGA when you talk about this with every Republican or every undecided But remember also, 7% of Trump supporters said they would not vote for him if he was convicted specifically of this crime. So this is my take, and I think it's really important for all of you to take part in what I'm talking about. So I tweeted this morning, we are not a perfect union, and God knows we're not united. There's much that needs to be fixed and improved to make democracy work for those it has failed. Too many believed the lie that our elections were fixed. Now they'll hear that our judicial system is fixed too. But the first step toward the future together may rest on asking a simple question if you still support Donald Trump. Could it be that our election and judicial systems are imperfect, but are the best in the world? And could it be that Donald Trump is really and simply a corrupt liar, a convicted felon, and the worst president in American history? Think about it. Talk to your fellow Americans. The answer to that question will determine if the great American experiment lives on past November 2024. And I mean that. We've stopped talking to the other side. But there's 31% on the other side who said, we won't do this if he's convicted of a crime. We need to talk to them, and ask them that and work to get them to ask themselves that question. And yes, it won't be fun because you're going to run into a bunch of MAGA folks who, and as soon as you do, go on to the next one. But even 7% of them are people we can reach. And we've got to start reaching them and bring them over. Because if we do, then even I think we might be able to get to Simon Rosenberg's magic number well over 50%. But and this is the first step to getting there, to holding him accountable. And now we need to beat him at the ballot box. I'm sure we'll have more next week. Enjoy the rest of this week's show. We get into just how bad the consequences of a guilty verdict will be for Trump and why the so-called freakout about Biden is just crazy nuts. Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show. Trump's still in court, but does a verdict really matter? Why I think it does. And yes, I saw the story about Democrats freaking out. I'm not. I'll tell you why. And keep those questions coming in. We're going to get to a few more this week, I promise. Alex promises. Alex, where should we get started?
Oh, you teed me up, Joe. We're going straight to a listener question about the Trump trial. This is from Bradley in New Mexico. And this hits really what we're going to probably spend the majority of our show talking about. For listeners, we're recording this on our usual Thursday time. There is not a verdict yet. Joe, if we go to CNN.com to check how long the jury's been deliberating, their live timer says, we are now 2 minutes ago, some kind of live in the courtroom update. We'll get into why all that stuff is really dumb anyway. But here's a question from Bradley. Looking at how the trial is being covered, it seems like the outcome doesn't really matter, right? Will it really have any kind of impact?
Yeah. First of all, remember, we are recording this before the verdict, which the clock is ticking. And, CNN will breathlessly, and Fox, CNN will breathlessly be doing the coverage of it, minute by minute.
It is interesting with Fox, though. Fox is doing minute by minute, too, but they're doing like but it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Well, they're doing the, that it's unfair, political persecution, whatever. CNN is doing, breathless coverage of what does it mean? We don't know crap because no one's in the jury room. But we'll read tea leaves for you and tell you what we think, which is, no one knows at all. And so the coverage is ridiculous and overdone to try to keep everybody engaged. But look, it does matter. The verdict will matter a lot, in my view. And, you've got to remember that, roughly a third of Republicans have indicated they will not vote for Trump if he's convicted of a crime. Now, do
we still buy that?
No, I buy that a third of them say that. I also buy that it, in an election this close as it already is, dead heat or Trump ahead by 2 or Biden ahead by 2, particularly in the battleground states where they're all tight. Although I think Biden's ahead in the blue wall states by a few points. But when you look at that, I buy that a third of them say that. I buy that some number of them mean it. And I'm talking like, is it 3% of them? Is it 3 points that really won't do it? Is it 13 points? Is it 20? But any of those numbers, even the 3, means big trouble for Trump. So one, if he's convicted, if they convict him, then I think one, that's really going to matter. And it's probably, game, set, match, because it'll be screaming and everybody will. But I think enough Republicans, enough independents, some others will mean what they say. It won't be a third of Republicans that decide not to vote for him, but it'll be enough of a number that it impacts the election big time. But the MAGA crowd, again, if it's I seriously doubt that there'll be any chance of an acquittal. So they really only question, is it a hung jury? Even under a hung jury, I think, there's a reason a third of Republicans have said they won't vote for him if he's convicted of a crime, right? They actually have concerns about it. So I think, same thing, hung jury, like where only one holdout or 2 holdouts. And there was the jury pretty much thought he did it, except for 1 or 2 people. I think that's enough. Again, is it 3%, 4%? But I think there's, the people who already, that third of Republicans who already have some concern, some thought in their head about maybe this, can I support a guy who's been accused of this stuff, found guilty of it? But, so I think, even a hung jury, some people, reasonable people, and then we know, look, there's a lot of like Nikki Haley supporters. I'm talking about, there are reasonable Republicans who aren't part of the MAGA cult. There are reasonable independents who lean Republican who aren't part of that cult.
Right.
Who I think will see a hung jury with 1 or 2 holdouts as a little bit of a nudge in the right direction. Again, some of them may not vote, but I think it makes it more likely that those who do vote will be moving towards Biden. Again, as more of the contrast comes out.
Right. Well, we'll take the not votes too.
Yeah.
So and this is where, again, we have a lot more to talk about on this trial, but like this whole thing gets to the rather be us than them again. Okay, Trump has a potential to lose a fairly significant chunk of his base right now with this.
Yeah.
And chances are he's not getting them back. That's not really showing up in polling right now, right? Because obviously the jury has yet to come back. The one other number, Joe, that actually might matter more to him winning or losing is how this affects the kind of swing voters in the 7 or maybe 8 actual battleground states that we have this year, right? I think it was in February, there was a Bloomberg Morning Consult poll, 53% of voters, and this is just the swing voters, in the 7 battleground states unwilling to vote for Trump if he were found guilty of a crime.
Right. That grows to 55% if 53 to 55, it's not a big jump, but if he's sentenced to prison, which is not going to happen. But the convicted of a crime, and even more Republicans said they won't vote for him if he's convicted of a felony, which if this jury finds him guilty, he's guilty of a felony. So, which, by the way, will be used, I'm sure, in a lot of ads at some point if he is convicted of a felony, given the numbers. So, no, I think the only question is he convicted or is it a hung jury? And I even think some of these numbers that we're saying, the 53 saying they, of the undecideds in the 7 closely watched battleground states, they'd be unwilling to vote for him if, in the general, if he's found guilty of a crime. I'm not sure obviously, if it's a hung jury, it won't be that all 53% of those people. That's my point. But is it, even if it's 10% of that 53%, in other words, 5.3 points that say, 11 members found him guilty, 1 held it up, and so it's a mistrial. We're talking about a very small, even of these big numbers that you're seeing of people who say they won't vote for him if he's found guilty. I think it becomes a much smaller number, but
Right.
it's probably enough to make a difference.
Well, we're talking just in terms of raw numbers, context for our listeners here. I mean, they're in deep trouble if that many Republicans are saying something's fishy here, I'm out. But if you think about all the hullabaloo about how many Democrats in primaries were protest voting because of Gaza, that total number of Democrats is a tiny fraction of how many Republicans could peel off here. So, like, for our listeners to understand, it's not going to be 100,000 voters in Michigan, but that's roughly how many protest votes they got. If you're talking about 10% of all Republicans in Michigan, that is a much bigger number than that 100,000, just for one example. So this is, I think, exactly why, and you're seeing this on the right, the MAGA media machine, Fox News, are really trying to delegitimize this, because they know they have to keep as many people in this bubble as possible and kind of have this alternate reality where, okay, base voter might think, I'm not going to vote for him if he's convicted of a felony, but maybe we can convince him that the charges were BS, right? Like, that's kind of where they're going.
Yeah, but I mean, the other side of this is, even if all that's true, I think there's a hell of a lot more people, even in the MAGA base, that are getting the, okay, you're paying off a porn star for not having sex with you. That I think Romney was the one who pointed that out. I mean, but there's some really sordid stuff going on here that, again, kind of reflects how crazy gone the cult is, right? And in other words, like, I understand how it probably will be used to hold his MAGA base together, and they'll rally around it, that it wasn't a crime, or that, so it's sleazy, so what? But I think in the end, how you get a Haley voter, in other words, these Nikki Haley voters are seeing the insides of this, catch and kill, what the catch and kill was hiding, even if it's not a crime, even if he's not convicted. And then at the same time, the abortion bans, all these things, they add up, I think, with the kind of voters that all of this is pushing away from Trump, that I think a hung jury pushes away from him. A conviction definitely further pushes them away. And so, he's eroding. And I think that's going to happen again. You see Biden getting much tougher in the tactics in terms of how he's going after black voters and other things that they're starting to do. So I think that contrast and again, who Trump really is and what he was really doing may not matter to the mega cult. They may even love it, but the rest of the world I think is going to move away. And even these young voters, people of color, where he's been, where Biden's been dipping and Trump's been showing some signs of gaining a little strength there, I think will get pushed away. I mean, again, part of this is, look, Trump won't be able to help himself. At some point, he's going to say racist stuff and help that along too. But also look at the coalition he'll end up having to keep right now. He has to keep the white supremacists, the Christian white nationalists, and the 12, 15, 18, whatever number you want to attribute to the black men that are currently intrigued by him or whatever. Keep them all together in a coalition, and women, any women that he still has, in a coalition with a guilty verdict or a hung jury probably, and that he's got to get through the next 4 months holding that coalition. How do you keep pounding the table on the white supremacists to stay with you? Hang in there, buddy, while you're trying to appeal to people of color. Will be really interesting to watch. I don't think he's going to be able to pull that one off, but we'll see.
So, Joe, before we move on, the other thing that happened this week that's kind of raising a lot of eyebrows is Biden campaign showed up at the trial, not in the courtroom. Obviously, they had a press conference outside, and Robert De Niro came out They had him as a surrogate. A bunch of people, like I know I saw Axe tweeted that it was a bad idea for him to do it. Where do you stand on what the Biden campaign did?
I agree with the Biden comms director, Michael Tyler, because he had the perfect response. A reporter asked him why the Biden campaign was outside the Trump trial, and he responded, quote, "Because you're here." So I thought it was a really smart guerrilla campaign stop. And yes, even a incumbent presidential campaign can still be guerrilla. It co-opted the media coverage of Trump's trial. I thought was really smart. And by the way, I don't think they would have been in the news cycle at all, right? I mean, whether you agree with what De Niro went off his rant went all over the place, called Trump's team gangsters and dropped an F-bomb.
So he was Robert De Niro, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he was Robert De Niro, which of course has the mainstream media all flustered. But again, the other side of this is that's what the Trump people have been good at. You're not going to read a lot of the people that they're fighting over, young people, are not following mainstream media. They're not watching CNN or they're going to catch a De Niro rant on on TikTok or something, right? So I just think again, people are looking at all this stuff, through kind of like lenses that are obsolete, and you could tell because the Trump campaign, went after De Niro. And, I just think that, the Biden campaign wasn't trying to have De Niro deliver, a measured policy speech at all. They were trying to destabilize Trump. And it obviously worked because Trump immediately went after, and his campaign went after De Niro. So at least that's what they're trying to do, is just get him off the thing, get him in the mix. And by the way, this is what we do all the time at the Lincoln Project. When we do an ad about, ketchup running down the walls at Mar-a-Lago, it's not about convincing young women in Arizona to vote for Biden. It's about getting Trump mad and keeping him off base, and it works pretty well. And after a while, you could even get his campaign manager fired if you're good enough at it. So I don't know. I thought in the end, I understand people, scratching their heads. They wouldn't expect something like that from the Biden campaign. By the way, neither would I, but I'm glad they did it because it just shows that I think they're getting how to fight, and their social media stuff's been a lot better in the last 3 or 4 months. And I think getting better, even though we are behind in that as a party.
Well, it just seems like they knew exactly what from start to finish. They knew what they were doing. I mean, the comms direct, like you said, Michael Tyler literally spelled it out for reporters. Yeah. But it's just so interesting. You wouldn't think twice if John Voight or any of the right wing nuts stood up and ranted outside the courtroom and the media wouldn't think twice either. They probably would cover it barely. I don't know. CNN would probably put a tracker on them or something. But the kind of two-sidedness of this coverage is still just every day totally wild to me.
No, there's something like that in the Trump campaign every single day. I mean, every single day there's somebody out there including Trump, who just goes out and spew. I mean, they'll let him spew. This is a guy. Okay, he comes out every day at the trial, to that barrier, walks up to it and says the same exact thing essentially every single day. And they cover it breathlessly. They cover the whole statement live. Like he's going to say something different, like it's news because he's going to say something different today, essentially. No, he doesn't. And it's all crazy, but they cover it. And so, again, I think the Biden campaign sending De Niro and Harry Dunn and officers from January 6th out there with him to just, basically bait Trump into a hissy fit, it's which you can count on. That's all, it's a 2-year-old throwing up tantrum. He did. It worked. So, I think they should do stuff like that more often. A lot of this stuff we know, again, from the Lincoln Project, sometimes there's an audience of one and you can get, you can really have an impact because what rattles around inside that, Donald Trump's head has a way of messing up his campaign, because he can't help himself. He's going to do it.
I think that puts a pretty good pin on the trial, Joe. The one thing also, you talked about this in your intro briefly, big Politico story. Again, I don't know how many people really read Politico anymore, but it's certainly causing waves among, at least on Twitter, which, again, I don't know how real that is, but all about the freakout. I'm just going to read you this lead. A pervasive sense of fear has settled in at the highest levels of the Democratic Party over President Biden's re-election prospects, even among office holders and strategists who have previously expressed confidence about the coming battle with Donald Trump. I would also just point to a tweet, and this wasn't in the article, from our friend John Favreau. He tweeted, "Let's face it, if the election were held today, Trump probably wins. Only way to stop that? Persuade as many people as we can to vote for Joe Biden. Yes, that's Biden's job, but it's also ours. We'll have to live with the consequences. So what can we do?" Joe, I thought that those two, obviously not the same thing, but thought those two were kind of an interesting kind of pulse check on where everyone actually is and where they feel right now. What the hell?
Well, I mean, first of all, Politico and Farrow are not saying, they're saying very different things. John was, pointing out we have a lot of work to do. And yeah, I mean, we say that all the time. We say they keep doing the crazy. We got to do the work. And yeah, it is a dead heat right now. But the part of his statement that I did, is this: if the election were held today, Trump probably wins. I don't agree with that part of what he was saying, and I definitely think that there's like the people that are. I don't even understand the freak out. I mean, Carville, who. I just don't understand it. I mean, just the negative internal, it's even worse than the usual hand wringing that you see in our party, because Democrats always hand wring. But it just doesn't make any sense to me. You've got to look at this thing right now and ask, why? What is going on here? Because it makes no sense. We're at a place where we're essentially in a dead heat. We have a candidate for president of the United States indicted on some 91, counts. A jury is literally being counted down minute by minute as they're in deliberation that could find him guilty or probably worst case a hung jury. He's got Nikki Haley voters out there who doesn't matter, primary after primary. She's been out of the race for months. She's still collecting 15, 18, 20 something % of the vote. And you have that with a guy with Trump showing these gains with blacks, Hispanics, and young voters. I mean, big gains. Or at least, where Biden was at 95 in 2020, and he's in the 70s now with blacks. Same kind of drop with Latinos, same kind of size drop with young people between 18 and 29. And guess what, folks? Guess what, all you hand wringers? We're in a dead heat. So we just went through why even a hung jury might get some of the 53% in the swing state leaners, undecided, who said they won't vote for him if he's convicted of a crime. You need, why some of the Republicans, the 31% of Republicans who say they won't vote for him if he's convicted of a crime. Again, hung jury even, does it get 3% of those people? 3% of the undecideds in those battleground states, 3% of those Republicans who say they won't vote for him if he's convicted. If he's convicted, it won't be the 31 or the 53%, but it'll be big. It's maybe 10% of them will do that. It's over. Okay, with all those groups that he's made gains hanging with him. But that's the other side of the coin. Joe Biden's out there campaigning hard, basically, making the case to those groups. And yeah, some of them are still going to be upset about what happens in Gaza, but that's the other thing. Is there a ceasefire between now and November that was engineered by Biden's diplomacy and our State Department? All these things are where I see this thing in a very different place than the hand wringers. I see Trump at a very vulnerable place, on the verge of losing many of those, that 31% of Republicans, the 53% of undecideds in the battleground states, if he's convicted, and some portion of them if it's a hung jury. I think so. He's in a vulnerable place where he could decline here. At the same time, the groups that Biden needs to shore up and bring back into the fold are all people that have voted for Biden, have been there, and he's got a record of lowering the cost of insulin, all these things that he's job creation, lowest black unemployment in decades, whatever. He's been there and doing it, and he's making that case. And that's before you engage, people like Warnock, Barack Obama, and others out there. Oprah Winfrey and others out there who will be making the case. The surrogates that will be out there making the case for him. And I just don't know who's going to be doing that for. I mean, he'll get some gangster rappers maybe, and I'm sure it will shore some of that up for him. But no, this is all Biden's going to grow from here. And that's the other thing, economic perceptions are bad, but they're improving. New consumer confidence is up again for the first time in months. Biden still has a giant, nearly 5-to-1 cash advantage right now. The GOP still has a huge small dollar fundraising problem, and a lot of the money they are raising are paying for the legal fees of the guy who's in court right now.
Because he's sitting in court right now.
I just think that I'm not blindly optimistic. Yes, Trump could win, but all this freaking out by the media, and that's the other thing. It's picked up. So as soon as Politico says there's the Dems are freaking out, you can, basically before you count to three, everybody on cable TV is doing the Dems freaking out stories, right? So it's the media that's freaking out, and it's willfully missing the way the race is turning right now, and it's moving in Biden's direction. We'll always be, running like we're behind. That's always the right way to run, because overconfidence kills in a campaign. I continue to go back. They do the crazy. We keep doing the work. And as you see this play out over the next 4 or 5 months, I think you're going to see that Trump was always at the top of his ceiling when he's in that 46, 47 range. We've been saying this for 2 years, and people keep saying, you keep repeating yourself. I think I've said for a long time, I think his ceiling's lower. That's where it was in 2016 and 2020. I think it'll be more like 45, 44. But I also think that Biden, who got 51% in 2020, is likely to be higher than that, maybe 52, 53, except again for the third parties. But I think there's a good chance that several of them are not going to make much, get much ballot access, and right. RFK Jr. could maybe take a little bit more from Trump than Biden. We'll see how that plays out. Certainly, we have to define RFK Jr. that way and make sure people understand that. But in the end, Simon Rosenberg's been saying we got to get to 55. I think we can get to 55, and I love him for it. And I actually think that that 55-45 would be possible. But for the third party stuff, which is still going to get 2 or 3 points. So I put it more at a 50-45 race, maybe 51-45 in the end for Biden. But that entails a hell of a lot of work. We've got to define RFK Jr., continue to define him in a way that makes him more palpable to Trump voters who might desert Trump than some Kennedy nostalgia voters who still see him as who might make the mistake of thinking he's not as crazy as he really is and could satisfy their need to take an off ramp. That's a mistake. That's a spoiler for Trump. So we got to do that. We got to make sure our vote gets out, and we got to make sure that we are reaching out to those Nikki Haley voters, those undecideds in the battleground states, 53% who say they won't vote for Trump if he's convicted. If it's a hung jury, we need to go to those people, make the case. You really want this guy? Look what he was accused of. Look what jury of his peers split on, with most of them thinking he did something, convicted him of, you thought he was actually should have been held accountable for a crime, and if it's a hung jury. And the same with the Republicans, the 31%, go after them. And that's before you even, there's a reason those 31% of Republicans have a problem, because a lot of that 31%, trust me, are not MAGA cult members. That's the 69, 70% of the party who says, no, I'll vote for him if he's convicted of a crime. That's your MAGA cult. The 31% who say, I won't vote for him if he's convicted of a crime, already are not in his pocket. There's a problem. They're already saying, geez, I don't know. I don't know about this thing. I don't know about that thing. I don't know, about it. Some of it could be his braveness. Some of them could be just not interested in the homophobia, the xenophobia, the racism, or just not interested in white nationalism or white Christian nationalism. So, I mean, or uneasy with it. Now, with a hung jury or a conviction, like I said, lots of reasons to see why he erodes, lots of places to see where Biden grows. And by the way, if Biden does grow with blacks and Latinos and young people, that's further erosion of where Trump is. So he's got erosion all over. He's on an island in a moat and sinking, and Biden has all kinds of places where where those voters are, who they are, what you've done in your record to make their lives better, or what you're doing with your policies to make their future better, or both. And I think he has in all three of those cases. And so he's going to make that case while Trump sinks. And Trump won't be able to help himself. No matter what this jury does, he's going to lash out. I guess unless they acquit him, then he goes to what? Gosh, the jury system is fair. Maybe the election wasn't stolen after all. Geez, who knows?
Trump attacking the judge, Trump attacking the jury, Trump attacking De Niro.
Yeah.
None of these things win him votes.
No.
That's what people, I think, fail to understand sometimes.
Yeah.
Anytime he attacks anyone, it ain't gaining him more than he already has. Joe, I want to end with one question. This is from Peggy in Texas, and I don't think we've covered this yet. Peggy says, I listen to your show every week. Thank you. Thank you for your insights and the hope. My question is, we had in all caps, Supreme Court Justice fly the flag upside down for days at his house, and there's literally nothing we can do about it, right? What do we do about the Supreme Court?
Vote for, look, there's nothing you can do. That's, Trump appointed these guys, or they were appointed by other presidents, and they have a majority and governed by any ethics rules. It's all decided. And it's clear that he and Clarence Thomas, and there's no way that they're, recusing themselves or stepping aside. So the only thing that we can do, between now and November, is to vote in November, to understand, like that a guy like Larry Hogan in Maryland, for example, who I think a lot of people would say is a moderate Republican. He now says he's pro-choice. He's running these ads that are very good ads, talking about how he just wants to say this straight out, that you don't have to. I'll never be in the Republicans' pocket, but I'll never be in the Democrats' pocket either. Both of I'll be an independent for you. Yeah, until he gives the majority to McConnell and Trump and the Republicans again, which got us the three justices that we have, the Trump justices. And so, people may be persuaded by that. You cannot. There's only one party right now that you can vote for in the Senate and for president in the House, and particularly if you're worried about the Supreme Court and what they're doing, and the bans that abortion bans and other things that you're seeing in these state courts and state legislatures. It's to make sure that John Testers, that Sherrod Brown, that Larry Hogan are elected, and the Larry Hogans of the world, no matter how, what part of the Republican Party they come from, they're just going to enable the cult. to become the majority there, just like they are in the House, which is why the House is so crazy. So what you can, that when you ask what we can do about it right now, this is the election where the Senate is everything, the presidency is everything. I think we'll take the House back. I do think, actually, because of exactly this kind of stuff, there's a good chance we can take the Senate by asking the question. I mean, this is the right question to ask, and asking what we can do about it. Vote for Democrats in the U.S. Senate for sure. And by the way, Joe Biden will. The reason the Biden vote is just as important is because some of these vacancies can happen on the next in the next presidency, and Joe Biden will not be. Will be. We've already seen one justice that he's appointed and how she's been voting. To protect rights. She's not going to vote to take away the right to vote or your overturn Roe v. Wade. There's more of that coming. And there's Agenda 2025, which lays this all out explicitly, that Donald Trump and his MAGA cult are going to inflict. So this is the right question, the right thing. Fight, work hard, get out the vote, talk to your friends, make them understand. And when you see these ads from these Republicans that are suddenly trying to tell you how moderate they are, it's bullshit right now. There is no such thing, because every one of them, even the good, what's people that I would say would be good, solid, moderate Republicans, the only thing they're going to do by winning in this election is providing a majority to the cult and creating that majority in the U.S. Senate that you're already seeing in the House, and that you're already seeing reflected in how the Supreme Court is carrying itself today.
Right. Well, Joe, that's a great place for us to end today.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for listening to That Trippi Show. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers, and it is part of Resolute Square, so check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. And we actually are starting to get to some of the listener questions, so we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Resolute Square.